This is going to be a slight departure from our regular content. With the passing of the Trump administration's most recent budget bill, we figured we'd take a timely look at what this means for the EV industry here in North America, more specifically the United States. What that means for you, the consumer, what that means for your depreciation curves, your dealer experience, and of course, what that means for the OEMs and future product, at least here in the US. This is not a political video. We're not political pundits, and Mark and I's job is not to tell you what to think or feel when it comes to your political views or beliefs. It's not going to be a video on whether this bill is good or bad, just the reality of what it means for cars. I want to walk you through what this means for cars like the thing I'm in right now, a 2025 BMW iX. Mark and I are going to go take you for a quick drive and walk you through what we think is going to happen. Mark, we're in your car, but not quite your car. This is a 2025
26
or 26, forgive me, BMW iX 45 whatever.
The lowest, the poverty trim level for $95,000.
And this isn't about this car. Obviously, you own one of these things. I'm Johnny V8. I own a Camaro, a C8 Z06, an E30, and I guess I have a long-term GX. I have the exact opposite of everything you currently are driving, a minivan, the iX, and your four-cylinder wonders.
Yeah, well, then there's a reason for it. I know people get bent out of shape, but you can't just we can't be doing this and have the same exact flavor of cars, otherwise we're not very objective. And I know this car is the antithesis of all the cars that you have and a lot of vehicles that people really love. So before we get into our conversation, I just want to ask you, because you really never spent time in this car before, what's your honest opinion about the iX?
I think, ignoring price, which is a big deal, and we're going to talk about pricing and depreciation, really the future of the EV market here very shortly, but my quick review of this car as a transportation luxury pod, right? I'm in a different stage in life as you. I don't have kids. I'm in a different stage, right? I either drive around town or I drive very, very far to Michigan, right? So an EV does not fit my lifestyle. But if this fits yours, which honestly gets over 300 miles of range, it is incredibly comfortable for the price point. And it is probably the best isolation chamber. If you just want to hear nothing, think about nothing, get a massage, have a very, very good audio experience, have quick enough inputs, I know why you like this car. I still think it's uglier than sin. I don't think this makes a lot of sense to buy, but as a lease luxury SUV for 2 rows, I think it's one of the best. If your lifestyle fits an EV, they've done a phenomenal job with this thing, man. It's great.
All right, so let's get that out of the way. We'll transition back to that. Let's talk about what this really point of this video is why are electric cars doomed in the United States?
Doomed is probably a strong word. I think at least till this current administration gets replaced or a more favorable administration to EVs steps back in, it's going to be a tough place for EVs in the United States. The rest of the world, Europe, Asia, South America, EVs will continue to thrive and populate. I don't think they're going to completely replace internal combustion for a long time, but sales in those areas will probably continue to increase. They're not slowing down. They haven't slowed down. All the experts who are far more knowledgeable than you and I predict by 2035, 2040, they're going to make up a much larger percentage of total sales, particularly in the cheap segment of EVs. In Asia, obviously, China or the Chinese government subsidized BYD. They're doing very, very, very well in their home market, and they're starting to do well in the rest of Europe. But in the US, a lot of the reasons why the car that we're in right now and a lot of other vehicles have even sold in the numbers that they have is they've been heavily subsidized through a tax rebate here in the US and subsidized by both the dealers by the fact that they can't seem to sell them without heavy discounts, and subsidized by the manufacturers as well by offering so many rebates for the cars. And with the tax rebate going away, the cheap EV market, I mean, just look at what happened in the slate truck pricing, is going to increase dramatically. And like in your case, your iX that you bought or leased, forgive me, was like 25,000 off, was it not, or 22?
Yeah, something very close to that. And a lot of people that were buying the cars right off the dealership lot were getting.
You ordered yours.
I ordered mine and I got that discount. So if you picked a 25 off a lot during the peak, you know, you were getting maybe $26,000, $27,000 off if you really, really did your work. And that's a lot of money. You can't get that with any internal combustion car. But again, that's because the lease credit was so high, the manufacturer incentive was so high, and then the price off the MSRP that dealerships were cutting you to move these things. That's what really dropped the payment, and the leases were subsidized. They were giving you basically less than 1%, or the money factor was so low that you couldn't even finance these cars for that cheap. So now that's going to go away in a large part, like at least half of that's going to go away. So you're already taking a group of cars that is very difficult to sell here in the United States because of the price, because of the way that our infrastructure is, how wide we're spread out, right? And the fact that culturally, I think we're in a very different time period or different place than the rest of the world is. There is almost just an ingrained hatred towards electric vehicles in this country compared to some other places.
I think all of that is entirely accurate. I want to bring this up because I know some of your friends have brought this up, you know, with the EV credit going away and some of our emissions laws changing, no longer being California centric. Does that mean, you know, OEMs are going to stop putting money in EV development? No. I you know, talking to the OEMs that I've talked to, they've already spent the money on these architectures, and the fact that, again, you know, there are other countries other than the United States. We are not the only market.
Right.
And car companies are global car companies at this point, right?
Yeah.
So the development is from a global perspective. They're going to continue to invest in this technology regardless of what happens here in the United States. And development for technology is not reactive, meaning the development for these projects started years ago, and it's going to continue to happen, right? Making snap decisions based upon what's happening in the political environment today is a very bad way. A reactive business plan is a very bad way to make engineering decisions, and OEMs know that.
Well, we're in this iX, right? This is already on its way out. This is a very new car, even though it's on an older architecture. Their next generation cars are moving to a completely new battery
And they've already spent probably $1 billion.
Over $1 billion, and they've already said, like, look, we need to consolidate, we need to stop spending now. The capitalized expenditures have been done for this next generation car, and now that car is going to come out in 26. For trying to sell a car in our climate here is going to be very, very difficult.
Yes.
You know,
In their home market, it won't be, though.
Right, true. But again, it's a difference in mentality between the different countries, its populace, its political structure. It seems like these cars have been caught in the crossfire of that. And something else that I find very, very interesting that I've been thinking about more and more is, are you familiar with the term Anemoia?
I'm not.
Okay, so this is the concept, and it's not in the real dictionary yet, but it's the concept of people feeling nostalgic for a period that they've never lived through before.
Like me and my 80s music.
Yes, right. So you're a perfect example. You're of that generation where you kind of saw a transition, but you really didn't live through like the 80s and 90s. And I think in the United States specifically, there's people that are almost tired of what we're sitting in right now. This is, again, it embodies a lot of the things that are wrong with our culture right now. Cloud-based computing, anonymity to the maximum of like sterile tech, just all the things that social media has brought to the table. And this car feels, and a lot of electric cars feel, just soulless, right? So one of the reasons people are clinging on to, like, they don't want to get rid of a lot of these internal combustion cars and these older cars is because it's from an era where you could still feel things, you could hear things, you know, you could fix things, you could learn how they work. It's not like insanely complicated. This is just, you know, electric cars are basically the embodiment of where a lot of people are feeling lost and like no personality. And I think these cars are caught in the crossfire of a lot of people coming to grips with the fact that our society has changed so far forward in tech and everything's so unaffordable that people are really looking back with rose-colored glasses of like, I want the old stuff. I want personality. And here, you know, how many people we talk to, they hate electric cars, and I think a lot of it is that nostalgia for the older cars that we don't have and we can't have again, unfortunately.
Cars have always had problems. They're just different problems today than they were back then.
I think the problems are different, but the knowledge base on people able to understand these cars and how electric cars are made and how they work. Nobody has the broadest understanding of how any of it works anymore. And it's because it's all closed ecosystem now. Everything technology-wise is closed ecosystem. You can't update your own software, you can't manipulate any of it, nothing on these cars. You can't fix it yourself, you can't really modify these new cars. It's like this closed loop of all the modern tech, and I think it's pushing away, it's creating a bigger divide between people's understanding and the machine. And people are inherently afraid of what they don't know. This is nothing new, this is like human nature. And I think the tech part has created this wall, and a lot of these cars have become so tech forward to a fault. It's gone from one extreme to the other, and it's happened so fast. Like, we're not talking like 3 generations of people. We're talking like Gen Z to, millennial. It's kind of has this wall in between. And then you have my generation where I grew up with it, and I'm like, I could take it or leave it. Like, I know what this car is. I know it's totally disposable, but I appreciate the tech in it that has enabled them to create a better interior space, more quieter, better packaging. There's certain things I love about it that I wouldn't go back to a really overcomplicated twin turbo V8 luxury car just to have a refined experience.
So I want to take a step back for a second. Practically, let's talk about price, what it means to you. I say this all the time to our viewers who come up to us. When it comes to buying a vehicle, what's the most important thing? It's what it costs you to actually own, not to buy. So over a 3 or 5 or 10-year period that you are in one of these vehicles, it doesn't have to be an iX, an EV, or any car, the most important thing, other than the fact if you like it or not, is what it's going to cost you bottom dollar-wise. So what do you think is going to happen, at least for the next, I can't believe we're only a year into this administration, or less than that, over the next 3 years to EVs, as long as the political status quo maintains? Because as is, prior to this, EVs had very, very steep depreciation curves. If you looked at a Model Y versus, say, a RAV4, different manufacturers, but 2 of the most sold vehicles in the world, Model Y is depreciated at a far more aggressive rate than the same, similar-ish car in a RAV4. And iX depreciated much, much heavier than an X5 did. A couple reasons for that. A, the fear of a new technology. B, the fact that these things were incentivized day one, either through government subsidy or through the OEM. Immediately, the day you left the lot, you depreciated the discount of the car.
Right.
So the MSRP is, your depreciation curve off the bat versus the MSRP is already larger. Do you think that problem is going to get worse? Or do you just think it's going to be more of the same, but the actual purchase price of the cars will be higher?
I don't know how you take a car like this, let's say, just say the next gen iX3 or whatever the hell they call it.
On the Klaus architecture.
Yes, right? Okay, it's way more expensive. The development costs are way more. The technology is way more expensive. I don't know how, as a manufacturer, you lower the price down to reasonable levels where your traditional middle class family can buy it. Now we're talking about luxury products, right? So that's a different class of buyer, but let's talk about like the mainstream EVs, because in the United States, we don't really have too many mainstream EVs other than kind of like Model Y, Hyundai and Kia, but the bread and butter ones that you could get for like $35,000, $40,000 are few and far between, like the good ones.
Yeah.
So if you strip out somebody's ability to get those at a really good rate and you depreciate them to the maximum where they're worth nothing, I don't see the incentive for people to buy them. Why would you do that when you can go and get a RAV4 where people will be fighting you on the internet when you list it for sale in the first like 20 minutes?
Because the cost down to that car will continue to be zero.
And the supply chain to support them, to have them fixed at every single shop, not just the dealership. You can take them to any repair shop and somebody can get parts for it and fix it. These cars are not like that. It's a dealer-only repair system. It's a dealer-only parts system. So out of warranty, it's 10 times more expensive than if you can go to AutoZone and replace something. And the parts for these things, like the electronic parts, like I brought up on the other video, the AC systems for cooling the batteries are far more expensive. The brain box between, doing the DC AC conversion and all the software part, all of those parts are more expensive when and if they fail. That's not something you're gonna have to deal with on some of these more tried and true, like internal combustion cars, at least at this point.
I think the repairability of commodity EVs will continue to be a problem that will continue to make the depreciation factor higher than, say, a Civic, CRV, RAV4, your bread and butter, internal combustion vehicles. And on the luxury side, the Chinese market has more or less proven it, and even here in the U.S., ultra high-end luxury EVs don't sell well.
Yeah.
The ultra wealthy prefer the theater of a internal combustion vehicle in their luxury application versus an EV. I do think, however, in sort of the class that the iX exists in, and the BMW i4, the Model S, sort of your not ultra expensive and like $200,000 plus, but your whatever you want to call that $50,000 to $100,000 class of car. Other than the fact that I think the price to buy them will go up, obviously with a lack of subsidy, and they will move slower off dealer lots. I don't think the depreciation curves are going to be any worse than they were pre-losing the incentives. I mean,
I think the sales are going to go down quite a bit.
I do, but because there'll be less of them on the market, people who want them used, I just don't see.
Well, the two cars I bought, the one for my mom, the Ioniq 5, and this the iX, I only bought them because the leases were free, essentially.
Yeah.
It's half off of what you would normally get an internal combustion equivalent for. I mean, we were joking around looking at some of the Fiat 500e. People were getting leases for under $100 a month.
ComEd out here was basically paying you to buy a Hummer.
Right, yeah. No, I know it. And that's the thing. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
You are willing to take the risk when they're handing out, amazing deals on these things to take a risk. If you remove that, most people are not going to play that game. They're going to buy what they need because they're so expensive. They don't want to be stuck with a car they can't flip.
But in the want not need category, like that mid luxury side, well, to your point, the sales are going to dry up and the costs go up. Those who actually buy said EVs, unless somehow the current administration pulls away some of the infrastructure that exists, once you're actually in one of these, I don't think your life is going to change that much.
That's a good point. So I'd be curious to see, again, this is a very U.S.-centric discussion. I think there's a lot of things in play here. I think there's a lot of things in play of why people have a really disdain for electric cars. And I'd be curious to see kind of the comments and the industry people, their opinions on this same discussion, Jack.
All right, Mark. So with that, and for you viewers, we're going to wrap up this long rambling video and some of our thoughts. Again, we're not talking about this being necessarily right or wrong, but I do think this is about the realities of where this technology is going to be and what that means for people who want to buy an EV, don't like EVs, or what it means for the car market as a whole. It's going to be a tough time for manufacturers, at least for the next probably year or so.